Now, as you likely know, the newest episode of Resistance entitled Fuel the Fire isn't technically all that new since it's been available online for the past couple weeks. And for those past couple weeks, I've had people telling me that this is the best episode yet. And well, I'm here to say that I have to disagree with those people. But before I go on, I want to give a quick disclaimer for those who will want to take to the comments and tell me I should stop being so critical of a kids show, because yes, this is quite obviously a show aimed almost squarely at young children. That's a fact that's becoming more and more evident with each passing episode. And if I were reviewing the show based on whether or not it's something that is both good for kids to be watching and or something they'd enjoy watching, my short answer to those questions would be yes. However, I'm trying to review this show based on the standards set by the two previous animated Star Wars shows, those being Rebels and Clone Wars, which had a very broad appeal and could easily be enjoyed by older and younger viewers alike. And as I've said before, the reason why so many people are upset at this show is because it seems to break away from that previously established standard. It's not simply grown men and women getting upset that Disney had the audacity to make a Star Wars show aimed at kids. That's something no one is actually upset about. They're upset because they broke away from a formula that had worked and worked well with the previous two shows. Okay, with that said, let's now get to the episode, which again was called Fuel for the Fire. And there will of course be spoilers ahead, not that there's much to spoil. Because what this episode reminded me of, and it's going to show my age a little bit here, is one of those public service announcements that all too often followed cartoons back in the 80s when I was a kid. And the best and probably most well-known example of these would be from G.I. Joe, and it's where the slogan, "Knowing is half the battle," comes from. And if you have no idea what in the world I'm talking about right now, I'll include a link in the description below to a video of some of these public service announcements. But what they basically were are these 30-second little skits that followed cartoons where they tried to teach kids an important life lesson, like don't talk to strangers, for example. Again, quite a few cartoons of the time had these, and maybe they still do today, I really don't know. But G.I. Joe is probably the most famous of all of them. And what this episode of Resistance felt like to me was a glorified 23-minute public service announcement for kids, where the lessons were, don't blow off your responsibilities because you'd rather do something fun, don't hang out with the quote-unquote cool kids because you think it'll make you cool, don't give in to peer pressure, and last and maybe most importantly, always do the right thing even though it might get you into trouble. Because basically this episode was all about Kaz being sick and tired of working, and while he should be working, he runs into what are essentially the cool kids of the station, led by a young man named Rockland, who wants to be a racer. And after they, quite clearly to everyone but Kaz, steal a pair of speeder bikes and have a little race, Rockland ends up having to save Kaz's life because his bike malfunctions, though we soon after learn the bike malfunctioned because it was actually sabotaged by one of Rockland's other friends, in an effort to get Kaz to owe him one. So then, playing this I saved your life card, Rockland begs Kaz to see Jaeger's ship, and Jaeger is of course Kaz's boss, and I'll get to more on him in a moment. But it's not actually the ship that Rockland wants to see. Instead, he's trying to steal some Corellian hyperfuel from Jaeger's office so that he can use it in his ship to win the next race, so he'll be on his way to fame and fortune. Only problem is the fuel is extremely unstable, and if he uses it, his ship will probably explode. So when Kaz hears that the fuel has gone missing from Jaeger's office, and about how unstable it is, he's finally able to put it all together and figures out that Rockland stole the fuel and is going to use it to try and win the next race, but that he's probably going to blow up, of course. So Kaz rushes off to save him and, after some crazy antics, manages to do just that. And at the end, when Kaz thinks he's going to get fired, Jaeger, his boss, says he's not going to do that because Kaz essentially did the right thing and he's a good person. Which again made this whole episode feel like a very long 80s cartoon public service announcement. And please don't get me wrong here, I'm not saying that's a bad thing out of a show that is clearly aimed at kids, and I'm also not saying that Rebels or Clone Wars never tried to teach kids some valuable lessons in an episode, but never was it so blatant like it was here. Never did it feel like the entire point of the episode like it did here. Because, and I kid you not, I really wanted Jaeger to say to Kaz at the end of the episode that knowing is half the battle, and if he'd done that, I would have given the episode 10 out of 10. But seriously, again from the adult perspective and based off the standards set by the previous Star Wars animated shows, this episode was boring. I can only imagine so many said it was the best because there was a big reveal in it, that being that Jaeger was a part of the rebellion during the Galactic Civil War and that he fought at the Battle of Jakku. He also apparently had a family at one point that we can only assume was killed, and all of this leads me to the conclusion that Jaeger will indeed be an agent for the First Order. Why do I say that? Well, because he probably lost his family due to some failing of the New Republic. That New Republic he fought to see come to power. And because of that failing, he lost his faith in the Republic and thinks only the First Order can bring true stability to the galaxy. This would then mean the real reason he took Kazin was so that he can keep an eye on him. Because as they say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Either that or Kaz learns more about Yeager as the show goes on, and he'll begin to suspect him of being an agent of the First Order, only to find out he's dead wrong. All I know is it's very likely going to be one or the other, and knowing is half the battle. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of this episode, or the first 3 episodes in general. So leave a comment below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.